What makes a Pokemon stand out from one another? There are many factors such as stats, design, typing, or move pool, but the number one trait that makes a Pokemon have a distinct identity is its ability. Let's take a look at life before abilities were introduced in Generation 3. In Generation 1 and 2, life was so much more simpler for the Pokemon trainer because they don't have to worry about ability. Instead, trainers only needed to focus on stats, typing, and move pool of a Pokemon. Without having a passive effect to worry about, the battle was all about picking the right moves, predicting your opponent's strategy, and making smart use of status conditions and type advantages. But here's the downside. The battles were so simple. Almost too simple. Without abilities adding layers of strategy, many matchups became very one-dimensional. Certain Pokemon dominated simply because of raw stats, powerful moves, or strong typing, and there was less room for creative tactics. But then here comes Generation 3. Generation 3 completely changed the landscape of Pokemon, not just with its introduction of abilities, but a slew of factors, like the introduction of double battles, natures, and the modern Eevee and Ivy system we still use to this day. Abilities added new depth to battles by offering unique advantages and disadvantages to each and every Pokemon, depending on typing, stat, and move pool. Now, what if I told you that this Pokemon Slacking is a regular old Pokemon that has stats equivalent to legendary Pokemon like Kyogre, Zacian, and Miraidon? You would probably say, wow, this Pokemon is just as good as these legendary Pokemon. What if I told you that this Pokemon can only attack every other turn thanks to its ability Truant? Slacking is a perfect example of how Pokemon abilities can completely work against it, turning what could be a powerhouse into a strategic liability. Let's take a look at another Pokemon. What if I show you this cute aqua rabbit Pokemon and its stat? What would you think of this Pokemon? Probably that it's some kind of stinky Pokemon and is not used much in battle. But if we take a look at its abilities, there's one that clearly stands out amongst the rest. Huge Power. Huge Power is where you double your attack stat. So now that 50 base power attack stat turns into 100 base power attack stat. Not so bad now, huh? Abilities are essential in defining each Pokemon's unique identity. With a pool of 310 possible abilities, each Pokemon can have between 1 and 3 of them, ensuring that no evolutionary lines share the exact same set of abilities. Pokemon with one ability generally has a signature ability, meaning an ability is given to one Pokemon and or evolutionary line. For example, Regieleki getting solely the Transistor ability, or Palafin getting solely the Zero to Hero ability. Giving Pokemon different sets of abilities encourages more diverse team building and enables unique synergies between teammates. However, having a smaller pool of abilities allow for better balance and greater accessibility for players. When multiple Pokemon share the same ability, it supports a plug-and-play approach to team building, making it easier to experiment with different team compositions while maintaining consistent strategies and synergies. Let's take a look at Pokemon with a Photosynthesis or Quirk Drive ability. There are Pokemon here with many different typings, many different stats and move pools, allowing you to play around with what works with your team and what doesn't. Any of them can naturally pair well with teammates that set up appropriate terrain or weather, such as Sunny Day for Photosynthesis or Electric Terrain for Quirk Drive. However, Game Freak wasn't finished with abilities just yet. Hidden abilities were introduced in Generation 5. These are special abilities that are usually harder to obtain than regular abilities. However, you can't just catch a Pokemon in the wild and hope and pray it has a hidden ability. In Pokemon Black and White, the only way to get hidden abilities was through the Dream World. You had to connect online, send your Pokemon to sleep, and hope you'd run into one of those special abilities. You had to connect online, send your Pokemon to sleep, and hope you'd run into one with a special ability. But hidden abilities were the key to making certain Pokemon actually viable or even top tier threats. Some Pokemon went from totally overlooked and useless to competitive staples, all because of one special ability. We're talking about the likes of Blaziken with Speed Boost, Incineroar with Intimidate, Ditto with Imposter, Ninetales Alolan with Snow Warning, and Landorus Incarnate with Sheer Force. In essence, abilities have transformed Pokemon from simple creatures defined solely by stats and moves into complex strategic assets, adding depth, variety, and excitement to every battle.